Hello and welcome to Bloomsbury Way, where shortly we see St. George's, Bloomsbury, perhaps the least known of Nicholas Hawksmoor's 6 London churches. This flamboyant church building was completed in 1730s. Its unusual tower is modeled on the Roman writer Pliny's description of the 4th century BC Mausoleum of Mausolus at Halicarnassus in Turkey, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. St. George was the 6th and final London church designed by Hawksmoor in his distinctive English Baroque style. The church hosted the memorial service for Emily Davison, the suffragette who died after throwing herself under George V's horse at the Epsom Derby in 1913. We continued east to see Bloomsbury Square, the oldest official square in London, and was laid out in the early 1600s. The name Bloomsbury is thought to derive from Blemondsbury, meaning the manor of Blemont, who acquired the land in the early 13th century. The land remained rural until the 1600s, when the 4th Earl of Southampton began developing the area, attracting an influx of wealthy citizens from the overcrowded city, particularly after the Great Fire of 1666. It was originally designed so the houses on the 3 sides were inhabited by the wealthy, with their servants based on the remaining side. Today, it is a fairly soulless place. We continued east along Theobald's Road, looking out on the right for the antiquated frontage of the Conway Hall. This has been the home, since 1929, to one of London's most obscure groups, the South Place Ethical Society, describing themselves as the oldest free-thought community in the world. At number 48 is the Charles Dickens Museum, situated in the only surviving London house the great writer inhabited. Dickens lived here, during which time he wrote Oliver Twist, Nicholas Nickleby, and much of the Pickwick Papers. It was here, too, that Mary Hogarth, Dickens' sister-in-law, died in Dickens' arms, aged only 17. It has been suggested that Dickens was more in love with Mary than his own wife, Catherine. The author was so stricken by Mary's death that he expressed a desire to be buried beside her, and for the only time in his life, missed a writing deadline. Mary's demise was fictionalized by Dickens in The Death of Little Nell in the Old Curiosity Shop, an account that caused scenes of hysteria among some of the writer fans when the book was serialized in 1840s. We headed west along Guildford Street, where we saw the Queen Square, another secluded Bloomsbury gem that is surrounded by several medical institutions. The square was completed by 1700s, and a statue of the Queen stands on the north side. For many years, it was thought to represent Queen Anne, and the square was once called Queen Anne Square. However, more recent thinking suggests that the statue was in fact meant to represent Queen Charlotte, wife of King George III. The name of the square is now an elegant compromise. We head through the square to reach the Church of St. George the Martyr. Originally a chapel of ease in the early 18th century, it became a parish church in 1700s. Hawksmoor added the 4 columns and circular dome, and you can still see the reredos on the eastern wall where the altar used to be situated before the Victorians moved it to the south side. Until 1800s, the church held an annual Christmas dinner for 100 chimney sweep apprentices and is still known today as the Chimney Sweeps Church. The poets Ted Hughes and Sylvia Plath were married here in 1956, and some of Hughes' lines are etched into the paving stones beside a memorial to the Queen's Jubilee on the south side of the square. On the eastern side of the square is Great Ormond Street, best known for its children's hospital. And then we headed down Cosmo Place and crossed over Southampton Row until we reached Russell Square, the second largest square in London. It was founded by the Duke of Bedford and built by the prolific developer James Burton, one of the first to have a permanent labor force of builders. The suffragette Emmeline Pankhurst lived as a child with her family in the square, and their home became a prominent meeting place for many of London's socialists, anarchists, and Fabians. This experience had a huge influence on Emmeline and laid the foundations of later struggles to obtain the vote for women. This part of Bloomsbury is now dominated by University College London, and on the west we saw the Senate House, the administrative centre of the college and home to the second largest library in London. Senate House was built in the 1930s to an Art Deco design and was at the time the tallest building in London. The western corner of the square contains one of London's 13 remaining cab shelters, among the most exclusive establishments in the capitals, given you need to pass the knowledge to drive a black cab and hence use the shelters. The Cabmen's Shelter Fund was established in London in 1870s to provide an alcohol-free alternative for cabbies between fares.